Chapter 2, Three-Dimensional Man, Hamlet. In examining Hamlet, we come to a very dark chapter in this book. Don Quixote, with his roots deep in instinct and faith, is the man of courage who redeems anything that befalls him. In Hamlet, we find the man of tragedy, he who makes chaos and failure of everything he touches. Hamlet is a torn man, tragic man, suffering man, sicklied over the pale cast of thought. He is the opposite of Don Quixote in nearly every aspect. Hamlet is the most profound example in all of literature of the divided man. Only Dostoevsky's characters come close to equaling him in their dividedness. Cervantes brilliantly portrayed medieval man as he left the stage of European civilization. Shakespeare foretold the modern, worrying, anxious man who was to take the center of that stage and is still the model for our character. Most people today are Hamlets, caught in that dry place between Don Quixote, who is never at a loss for something bright and cheerful in life, and Faust, that man of higher consciousness, a state yet to come for most men. To understand Hamlet is to gain invaluable insight into the emptiness and loneliness of modern existential life. Hamlet is three-dimensional man. He has no roots in the instinctive world, and his head is not yet in the heavens, where he can gain his strength and nourishment of enlightenment. He is the forerunner of a new man, whose characteristics will be the healing of the paradox of masculine and feminine, doing and being. Lao Tzu, the Chinese sage, commented on this. He who understands the masculine and keeps to the feminine shall become the whole world's channel. Eternal virtue shall not depart from him, and he shall return to the state of an infant. Hamlet's failure is what he touches. Hamlet's failure is that while he touches his divine state, he makes only division and tragedy of it, not paradox and synthesis. We must wait for Faust to evolve in this way. If Hamlet has a failing, it is his inability to withstand the pressure of the herd mentality that surrounds him. He cannot make up his mind whether to follow the dictates of custom and its barbaric solutions, or to listen to the enlightenment of his own soul and conscience. He does neither, and finally he loses the value of both. But Hamlet, in his losing, is the forerunner of Othello and King Lear, and most of all, Faust. The play begins with Hamlet exiled from his rightful place as king of the land. His father has just died, and Hamlet's uncle, the usurper, has taken the throne. Worse, the usurper has married Hamlet's mother within a month of her widowhood. Hamlet's friends bear the news to him that a ghost haunts the ramparts of the castle at midnight. Hamlet attends the ghost. He hears the voice of his father exclaiming that he has been murdered most foully, and that Hamlet must take revenge to claim his rightful place as king. Hamlet's undoing begins with endless certainties. He debates with himself whether he should kill the usurper, which would have been his right as a medieval king, or listen to the more noble part of his heart, and not add more blood to an already bloody drama. Finally, he does neither. As Emily Dickinson once put it, he wavered for us all. It is this vacillation that is his undoing and that characterizes a three-dimensional man. In seeing Hamlet fail to make up his mind, paralyzed between two paths, we see the impossibility of living as a three-dimensional man. A thought which quartered hath but one part wisdom and ever 3 parts coward, is Hamlet's diagnosis of his malady. The terrible, unlivable lot of the three-dimensional man is to see the fourness of life in its wholeness, severed into 2 unequal parts, 3 and 1. It has sight of the 4, the wholeness, but has only 3 of its parts functioning. There is no peace in such a man. He knows too much to be simple, but not enough to be whole. It waits for Faust, who uses precisely the same language of 3 and 1 for healing, to take this theme to its completion and heal the wound of self-consciousness. I am reminded of the arrow that pierced the Fisher King's thigh in the story of the quest for the Holy Grail. It can neither be drawn back out nor pushed through, so it stays in, festers, and exposes its bearing to unending suffering. Hamlet cannot shake himself loose from his paralysis. His need to act and his abhorrence of violence are in conflict. Out of this agony, Hamlet utters the most famous soliloquy in all of literature. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them, to die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die and to sleep perchance to dream, aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled all off this mortal coil, must give us pause. This is the cry of despair and imprisonment that haunts every three-dimensional man. Hamlet, the very epitome of the uncertain man, cannot make up his mind whether to live or die. He cannot live, he dares not die. He tortures everyone around him, especially the women close to him, and makes life unbearable for himself. A lesser man might have burst his way out of the dilemma by killing the usurper uncle. A greater man might have withdrawn from the struggle and found a solution through fate and faith. This is not to imply that killing the uncle would be wrong. Hamlet's indecision is the irredeemable element. A Chinese proverb has it, quote, if you are going to stand, well stand. If you're going to sit, well sit. But don't wobble. Hamlet wobbles, wavers, and edges toward his destruction. His own confession is, oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. O God, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seems to me all the uses of this world. Fie, fie, 'tis unweeded garden that grows no seed. As Tolstoy wrote, he was suffering the anguish men suffer when they persist in undertaking a task impossible for them, not from its inherent difficulties, but from its incompatibility with their own nature. Polonius, Hamlet's intended father-in-law, gives him advice that could avert all the coming tragedy, but Hamlet cannot hear. Quote, this above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Hamlet's indecision finally drives Ophelia, his beloved and daughter of Polonius, who Hamlet later kills, to such a state of suffering that she utters a desperate cry, my lord, as I was sewing in my closet, Lord Hamlet with all his doublet all embraced, no hat upon his head, his stockings fouled, ungartered and down-gyved to his ankle, pale as his shirt, his knees knocking each other, and with a look so piteous in purport as if he'd been loosed out of hell to speak horrors, he comes before me. Hamlet, when challenged about what he is doing, replies, words, words, words. Three-dimensional men are often caught in words and are hesitant to act. At one point, Hamlet cries, Now to my word. Another hero, Faust, will take up the modern problem of the word later and realize he must act also. R.H. Blythe, the literary critic, comments, this, quote, words, quote, has a deeply tragic meaning in the play. It is, in fact, the secret of Hamlet's character, the cause of the tragedy. Hamlet is the zenless man whose energy, like a mouse in a wheel, goes round and round inside him and issues not in action but in talking. Hamlet is also alienated from the feminine beauty of his inner life, that he utters this famous blasphemy to Ophelia. Get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent, honest, but yet I could accuse me of such things, that it were better my mother had not borne me. Then he adds insult to injury. Quote, if thou dost marry, I'll give thee this plague for thy dowry. Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow, thou shalt not escape calumny. Get thee to a nunnery, farewell, or if thou wilt needs marry a fool, for wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. To a nunnery, go, and quickly farewell. It is a characteristic of complex man, caught between functioning by instinct and acting by enlightenment, that he often destroys everything feminine within his grasp. We watch Hamlet destroy Ophelia, for what women or what feminine element could withstand such abuse? We see Hamlet destroy the queen, his mother, with equal devastation. All feminine elements wither in the face of three-dimensional consciousness. Hamlet finally decides on a most clever device for making his intentions known to the usurper king. A group of players arrives at the castle, and Hamlet instructs them to produce a play in which a noble king is murdered by poison, following which the murderer takes the throne and marries the murdered king's wife. The usurper king, upon seeing the play and comprehending its message, plans Hamlet's death. Hamlet goes to the usurper king's chamber with full intent to kill him and set right the something that is rotten in the state of Denmark, but he finds him at prayer. Quote, now might I do it, Pat, now, he is praying. And now I'll do it, and so he goes to heaven. And so I am revenged. That would be scanned. A villain kills my father, and for that I, his sole son, do the same with the villain send to heaven. Hamlet backs away, again uncertain. The king, finishing his prayers, said, quote, my words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go. Ophelia's brother, Laertes, surveys the growing tragedy as he observes his sister's suffering. Ophelia, finally borne down by his artless indecision and tension, drowns herself in a stream. The king now instructs Laertes, who is Hamlet's friend, Ophelia's brother, and the son of the murdered Polonius, to engage in a friendly fencing duel with Hamlet, but to put poison on the tip of his rapier? Am I saying that right? Rapier? So that he, by an accidental thrust, might kill Hamlet. A stoup of poisoned wine is nearby in case of the poisoned rapier does not do its deed. The duel is fought, and Laertes wounds Hamlet, and then an exchange of rapiers takes place, and the poisoned rapier, now in Hamlet's hand, wounds Laertes. Laertes, in the face of death, confesses what he has done. Now Hamlet takes action. He rises out of his indecision and strikes the king with a poisoned rapier. But it is too late. The queen, unseen by those around her, drinks the poisoned wine and dies. In a moment, Hamlet, the king, Laertes, and the queen are dead of the indecision that feared any action, and by so doing, brought down the worst possible outcome on all. Killing and death are the result of Hamlet's efforts to avoid a decision that would have cost him only a fraction of the final cost. A few moments before his death, Hamlet comes to an awareness of a consciousness beyond his neurotic split and indecision. Just as Don Quixote saw the three-dimensional consciousness at the last moment of his life, so Hamlet sees that which is greater than himself at the last moment of his life. He says, quote, "Our deep plots do pall, and that should learn us. There's a divinity that shapes our ends. Rough hew them now we will. The play ends with the tender lines of Horatio, a noble and solid person. Quote, now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest." Hamlet is the man of nobility and partial consciousness, who sees a vision of the meaning of life, but he is not strong enough or complete enough to bring that vision into focus. He is wise enough to see, but not strong enough to accomplish. He is caught between vision and practicality, and fails in both regards. In this, he is the prototype of so many modern men who see a noble world in their imaginations, but don't have the means to accomplish it. Hamlet fails, but he fails so that Faust might begin where he left off. We turn now to the story of Faust to find a solution to the problem that overwhelmed Hamlet.